Definitely the exact result Sugar wanted. I don't know if it went necessarily completely as planned. The finish wasn't as clean as I think he would have liked. He even went into greater detail today, talking about how he was trying to land a spinning type knockout. He was trying to set up this same finish that he had in one of his LFA fights, where he had kicked a guy up against the fence and then went and did a spinning heel kick, I believe, right in and kind of broke his guard and got him like on the chin or on the cheek. So that would have been really cool to see. But as we saw in the fight, when he threw that kick up against the cage, Quinones kind of crumpled a little bit and did a little bit of a turtle move. So the finish was open right there. He could just go ahead and take him out. I was impressed from start to finish. I thought he looked calm, cool, and collected in there, like a killer, really. Just picking his shots. Landed a really clean uppercut in there. It was just smooth, a really smooth performance. I mean, came out completely unscathed. That's exactly how you want to go in there and fight, just like Shevchenko does, in my opinion. She goes in there, she executes, and then she gets out. And that's how the best do it in this business. That's how you have longevity. You go in there, you beat up who you're expected to beat up in a timely fashion, and then you get on to the bigger and next fight. Now, what I'm interested in after this fight, after this performance, is who is the next fight. He's already kind of mulling over opponents. I know one of the names he brought up with was Marlon Chito Vera. That's another guy that he was matched up with prior to his suspension. I believe it went Quinones his first matchup, and then Chito Vera was going to be his next matchup that got canceled. Mm-hmm. So I think it would be really interesting to have him give both of those fights to those guys that beforehand had those fights matched up, and then that would prove, okay, cool, this guy is exactly who we thought he was 2 years ago. After that fight, maybe get him a better ranked opponent, maybe in the top 15 at least, and see where he goes from there. Because I mean, geez, that guy for a 135 pounder, I mean, he looks big, right? He almost looks like a thicker Sandhagen, really. So
it doesn't look like he belongs in that division.
Yeah. And he's young too, so he has room to grow if he so chooses. But he looks like he takes care of himself. I mean, that 2-year layoff, I think he was 22 or 23 at the time that he got suspended. Mm-hmm. That is hard for a guy at that age to stay so focused in his craft. I mean, he had the world at his hands. I think he had already won 1 or 2 $50,000 bonuses, for performance of the nights or whatever, in UFC. Already had a couple sick cars, if I remember correctly. I know he still has that one car. It's like it's almost like an ATV type car, but it's like a street car. I'm terrible with cars, so I don't know the exact.
Pretty sure. But I think you're talking about the Spider.
Yeah, but the point I'm getting, right? Like the guy has the world at his fingertips already. He's already been on TV multiple times. He's on the cusp of superstardom, and he stays focused and he stays humble, and he realizes that there's holes in his game, and this is the perfect opportunity for him to be out of the limelight for a second, for him to just go back and really grind and, close the gap between him and those top elite level fighters. I'm excited to see what his next steps are because I really have a lot of faith in this kid.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that he could end up being the Adesanya of that division, just more based off of the fact that he doesn't have that many fights, but he's already kind of being considered one of the top guys left in that division? So do you think he could be one of those guys who comes in, does about 4 fights, and then he already has a title shot?
Absolutely.
He won the interim belt in his 6th UFC fight, correct?
Let's see. I believe it was his 5th.
He just has
5th or 6th.
He just has 8th fight over the weekend.
Oh, so
with that one title win, title defense. Yeah, the interim was only a 6th fight in UFC.
Yeah, and the thing that helps, like we have said in previous podcasts, money attracts, right? Like that's the number one thing that UFC is looking for, is someone that they can market, someone that they can put on put on as the face of the poster, right? Someone that they can plaster on a billboard, in the middle of New York and on the side of a road in Las Vegas. Like they want to have that personality that draws people to the fight, that interests the casual fan, and brings them those added viewers. Sean O'Malley is definitely a guy that can, I believe he is definitely a guy that can bring in those added viewers. He's
a draw. He's a draw.
Yeah, definitely. He has charisma. He has the stylistic fighting capability that everyone's looking for, with the spinning attacks, with just relentless pressure and precision and power, even for a lanky guy. He's young, so he's interesting. He's undefeated, so he has that allure, of an undefeated fighter. I think he's just got so much going on for him. It's very interesting to have fighters like this in divisions. You want to have these guys stay active and fight, the right guys, right? You don't want him to go ahead and start fighting top fivers out of nowhere because he has had a 2-year layoff. Let's let him build himself back up again, right?
Yep.
I don't want to feed him to the wolves right away. I want to see him take a progressive step up, and I think that's exactly what Israel did. I think he went from, unranked guys to just really starting to test himself, level up each time. And then finally now he's the guy, right? Now it's people have to challenge him. He's not the challenger anymore. He's the guy that's getting challenged. And I think Sean, at this point in his career, he's still the challenger, but he needs to be challenging the guys that are right for him to challenge at this moment. I think it's still a steady progression that has to go forward. And he would probably disagree with me. I think he probably has the most confidence in himself. He probably thinks he could go and fight the top guys right now. So I'm excited long story short, yes, I think he could be just like Israel because he has all of the same flavor that Israel has and that Connor has, all the interesting fighters out there.
Then also another question I got for you is, do you think, just based off his performance, even though we saw only 3 minutes of a fight, is he better now than when he was before the suspension?
I think that he did display that his physique has improved, and I think that is really important. I think that's the number one thing that I personally wanted to see is he's still this lanky, young, kind of frail guy. Like in one of his fights, he broke his foot, right? So that's something that he wanted to address, and he wanted to make sure, okay, let me get my body as a whole stronger so I can be more durable in these fights, because I'm not going to just be fighting 15-minute battles all these times and, getting 1-minute knockouts. I'm going to eventually have to take on 25-minute wars if I want to be the champion. And I don't remember the exact numbers he was given today, but I think he said he went into that fight around 150 pounds. In his last fight before that, I believe he went in there against Andrei Sukhomtov around 144. So not a huge difference, but there's some added poundage in there, right? Some added cushion, I guess you could say. Some added protection, for a better word. So I think another thing he really worked on too was his grappling. That's the main thing with this fight is we didn't get to see him bring everything out, right? It's a good thing and a bad thing. He didn't get to show us everything we want to see, but also he's still a question mark for everybody in that division. That's great for him. He doesn't want to show as much as that, right? As little as he can show as the best news for him.
Because that's the point you were getting at for Zhang Wei Li in our preview show.
Yep. The less you know about your opponent, that's a question mark, right? There's no way to prepare for the unknown. You're just gonna have to fucking prepare for everything. Excuse my French. But yeah, so I was very impressed with how he came in, and he looked better in his physical areas, and also like technique. Like I said, he still looks sharp. We didn't have the opportunity to see him, dive too deep in any of his pockets.
Definitely.
Fair enough.
I think one of the biggest improvements I saw for him is you can see when he first was on, like in the Dana White Contender Series and stuff like that, when he was throwing like those spinning moves and a lot of his like more crazier, more non-orthodox moves, he was kind of out of control when throwing them, which it did have a lot of power behind him, but you could definitely tell he was kind of just throwing them and it wasn't really controlled. I think he got a chance to probably throw like 2 or 3 spin moves. I think around like 2. And they both looked pretty like controlled, like he was able to throw them and be ready to go back again. And I think before it was he would throw them, have to regather himself, and then go back in, which kind of gave his opponent time to regain themselves and get back in there. But now he threw a couple of spins. I believe he threw a spinning kick and a spinning like elbow, I believe was the other one. And he landed it and was just right back there in their face. And that's what makes those spinning moves so dangerous, is if you can hit and still be right there. And then they'll be shocked by the move, but then now you're just there throwing jabs and landing shots and uppercuts and stuff again. So I think that was definitely a big improvement he showed.
I also like to now that you mentioned, I liked when Jose, he kind of went for the clinch a little bit, or maybe went for a possible takedown, or just came in close right before the finishing sequence, and Sean just took him, shrugged him off, threw him down basically, and that's when he threw that kick right into his guard and rocked him. I mean, that just shows you the kid he's not going to be pushed around in that division. People think he's some video game lanky kid. No, dude, this guy is from Montana and he'll beat your ass.
He's from Montana, though? He's from Arizona.
I believe he is he was born in Montana, if I'm not mistaken, and he trains in Arizona out of the MMA lab.
Okay.
He moved there, I think, when he was 18 years old. He wasn't really the biggest fan of school, all that kind of stuff. Was really into fighting, did kickboxing, and then I believe Tim Welch was at one of his fights and basically was like, "Yo, do you want to do this for real? And if you want to do it for real, you can come and train with me." And I think he went down there for like a week or so and ended up moving down there full time. So nice. Thank God for that. Thank God for Tim Welch, man. That guy got Sean heavily invested, and it seems like that's like the perfect, like it's a match made in heaven with those two. That coach and trainer coach fighter bond between those two guys. I mean, they have a podcast together. They do everything, man. It's really cool to see. Yeah, it's really cool to see.
Yeah, no, I love this. But at least now we could all officially say that the Sugar Show is back. And as fans, we should all be really excited to see this young guy start to put a hurting on that bantamweight division.
Definitely. He's the guy to look out for, man. And he says all the right things. Even in his post-fight interviews, he's giving all the credit to his sparring partners, to his coaches, to his sponsors.
Well, it's crazy. He has one of the most perfect mixes of confidence, but humility at the same time.